Hey, what's going on guys? John here. And in today's video, I'm going to go over DSLR and mirrorless cameras. What's the difference? What are they? And how you can be more informed on a purchasing decision if you want to buy one of these type of cameras. So first, what is DSLR? So DSLR is a digital single lens reflex camera. And what this means is light comes in, it's reflected off a mirror, and that goes to two sensors, the autofocus and auto exposure sensor, and then that goes out the viewfinder. Where in a mirrorless, those two sensors are not there. So on a mirrorless, as the name implies, is mirrorless. So it doesn't have a mirror and it doesn't bounce. As soon as light comes into the camera, that's what you see. So now that you know the difference between mirrorless and DSLR, what are the key differences? So when you only have the image sensor, the camera is less heavy. So the key difference between mirrorless and DSLR cameras is that mirrorless cameras are a lot less heavier. So if you're looking for a nice light camera, this could be an option over DSLRs. The other thing is usually mirrorless cameras have smaller lenses. So, the lenses aren't usually as big and bulky because you don't need as much distance between the mirror and the end of the lens. So, and the other thing is autofocus. So the autofocus, especially on early mirrorless cameras, were a lot worse. They're getting better over time, but because DSLRs have a separate autofocus sensor, the autofocus is a lot better usually. But as I said before, mirrorless cameras are always evolving, so they're getting better with time. The other thing which is getting better as well is lens selection. So with DSLR cameras, you have a lot of lenses that you can buy that are established, where since mirrorless is new technology, not as many lenses are available for these type of cameras. And lastly, the biggest difference between the two is usually mirrorless cameras, because they're smaller since they're smaller lenses, it's usually a tighter shot. So when you put on a lens on a mirrorless camera, say if you put on a 100mm lens, it looks more like a 150 to 200mm lens. It zooms in more. So this can be tricky if you're trying to find like a wider shot. Whenever I put like a 12mm lens, it kind of looks like a 20mm lens. And I've always wondered about this, but this is a common fact with mirrorless cameras, is that it looks tighter than what it is. So let me explain my story on why I switched to mirrorless. So when I was in school learning about cameras, I was first introduced to the JVC camcorder. I can't remember the exact model, but it's your typical camcorder where you can't change the lenses, everything's built into like this bulk camera. And we got introduced to that, we learned how to operate using that, and then they showed us, at that time, the Canon T3Is were hot, so we learned those. So the chip is the CMOS chip, and the instructor said, it's a higher quality. So if you're shooting video, the chip is better. So in this case, back in the day, camcorders were very expensive and DSLRs were cheaper. And the same goes for mirrorless, where DSLRs are expensive and the new mirrorless cameras can often shoot better and they have a lower price target. So it's kind of very similar. In my personal experience, I personally bought a T5 when I was in high school, and that was my go-to camera. And then I recently upgraded like 3 years ago to the G85, which is a Lumix camera, which is actually the one that I'm recording this video on right now. So one of the reasons I switched is because I wanted to shoot in 4K, and the DSLRs back in the day in 2018 they were expensive if you wanted to shoot in 4K, and the new mirrorless cameras came out. They were cheaper, they shot in 4K, and higher frame rates as well. So that's why I made the switch. And since then, I can't really complain with the mirrorless cameras. They're great, they're very light. Since I work in live events, they're great if you're going to an event and shooting a video for the event. Where DSLR cameras, the lenses are bigger, the camera's bigger. If you're carrying the equipment across town and whatnot to the event and around the event, you're gonna get tired more easily. So those are some of the advantages to mirrorless. Let's talk a little bit about the disadvantages that I've ran into using mirrorless cameras. So the big one is they're not really good in low light. But this is improving with time with newer models that are coming out. Mirrorless cameras, especially the one I have with the micro four thirds sensor, is they're not that good. It's a smaller sensor and it struggles in low light performance. But you know, if you're looking for something that's better in low light, I would definitely get something with a full frame sensor. Sony's coming out with some really nice cameras with full frame mirrorless. So, you know, the technology is always advancing. So the mirrorless is the future, but there are still some drawbacks to mirrorless. So there you go. Those are the differences between DSLRs and mirrorless. I hope this video has helped you if you're in a buying situation where you need to decide between DSLRs and mirrorless cameras. I often like to refer to cameras as like cars. You can buy one now, but tomorrow there will always be a newer, shinier, and better model. So just keep that in mind. Keep in mind the specs that you're looking for, that you want to accomplish, what's most important to you, and make your purchasing decision from there. In my case, I was looking for something that was cheaper than DSLRs, that shot in 4K at a higher frame rate. And for me, mirrorless was the way to go. So there you have it. I hope this has helped you. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.